one of my favorite subjects to talk about is George Sears Greene and, of course, Gettysburg Granite. So this is about an hour-long program. Oh, thanks, Ed. And we've got three big topics to talk about today. I want to talk about the battle for Culp's Hill, the Battle of Gettysburg, the many Smith granite monuments that are erected in or around Culp's Hill, and then at the end we'll talk about George Sears Greene and the restoration project going on at the Greene Cemetery in Apponaug, Rhode Island. So we'll jump right in, the Culp's Hill battle. In 1863, Robert E. Lee, commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, and the Confederate higher-ups are in kind of a bind. They've had a series of successful battles against the Army of Potomac, but in 1863, the Union blockade is really starting to take effect. So Lee and the higher-ups come up with a plan. They're going to invade the North and try to win a big victory north of Washington, D.C. All right. I think June 15th, the Army of Northern Virginia crosses into Pennsylvania, and the two armies are going to meet in southern Pennsylvania, right on the Maryland border, at a town called Gettysburg. All right, this is Robert E. Lee. The bad guys are in red, about 70,000 strong in the Army of Northern Virginia, and General George Gordon Meade commands the Army of the Potomac, about 90,000 strong at Gettysburg. So they meet on ridges north and west of town, and Union troops from two corps hold the roads on that side of the field for several hours during the day. But at the end of the day, with Confederate reinforcements, they're forced through the town to the heights south of town. That's Cemetery Hill, named because it's got a big cemetery on top of it. All right. So here we have kind of the situation at the end of day one. The 11th Corps and the 1st Corps are kind of defending the north and east of Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill. For reasons kind of still argued to this day, the Confederates don't make a move to occupy Culp's Hill, which is really kind of commanding the field. The attack grinds to a halt and the sun sets on Gettysburg on day one. Overnight, the Army of the Potomac is reinforced by the 3rd Corps, the 12th Corps, and the 2nd Corps. About 6 a.m. on July 2nd, the 12th Corps is moved east to Culp's Hill, which is, our topic for today. They link into the 1st Corps. I believe that's Cutler's Brigade, already kind of set up on Culp's Hill. In command of a brigade in the 12th Corps is George Sears Greene. He is 62 years old at the Battle of Gettysburg. He's born in Apponaug, Rhode Island, May 6th, 1801, and he's a distant cousin of General Nathaniel Greene of Revolutionary War fame, who is also a Rhode Islander. He attends West Point, graduates second in his class of 1823. In 1828, Greene is married to his West Point roommate's sister, Elizabeth Vinton. They have 3 children, but by a combination of tragedy and disease, by 1833, his wife and his 3 kids have died. He's 32 years old and has lost his entire family. In 1838, he remarries and has 5 children. His son, Charles Thurston Greene, is on his staff at Gettysburg. And his youngest son, Francis Vinton Greene, who was barely 13, is on campaign with his dad, but he gets left behind in Maryland when it seems like there's a battle that's about to happen. So Greene spent most of his life as a civil engineer, building railroads and viaducts and things like that. In 1861, he's 60 years old. He's given command of the 60th New York Infantry. At 60, the troops nicknamed him Old Man Greene or Pap Greene. But he's quickly promoted to Brigadier General after his valiant actions at Antietam, and eventually given command of his old regiment's brigade under Geary's division in the 12th Corps. Those 5 regiments are the 60th, 78th, 102nd, 137th, and 149th New York. So this is called Greene's New York Brigade. In July of 1863, Greene, like I said, had just celebrated his 62nd birthday, and he's the oldest Union general at Gettysburg. Greene's brigade arrives at Culp's Hill and, like I said, ties into the 1st Corps troops at the summit of the hill. The rest of the Corps stretches down Culp's Hill all the way down to McAllister's Mill Pond, which is here on the south of the map. Here's a zoom of Greene's position. Now, when Greene arrives, there are 2 versions of this story, but the one I like the best is that when Greene arrives, he sees that the 1st Corps has started to fortify Culp's Hill. All right, this picture is facing east from Stevens Knoll over Culp's Hill summit. These are the trenches of the Iron Brigade, which are on the north face of Culp's Hill. So we don't know how substantial these works were on the morning of July 2nd, but there was something there for sure. So Greene comes and sees these earthworks, and at this point he has a conversation with his division commander, John Geary, and he says, we should really kind of build, we should fortify this position. Now, Geary is not a huge fan of this. He thinks that having men fight from fortifications will make them unfit to fight without them. In other words, turn them into cowards without breastworks, all right? Greene is insistent and ultimately receives permission to fortify his line. Now, Greene is a West Point trained engineer, and the earthworks that he builds on Culp's Hill are substantial, right? We're using rocks and logs and pretty much anything the guys could get their hands on, even putting in a headlog, which is, you can see on top, it goes on top of the earthwork and you can fire underneath it and protect your head. This is a Matthew Brady photo from a couple of days after the battle. This rock is still there, so any nerds in the audience, you can go sit on that rock and recreate the photo. Most of the rest of the 12th Corps builds earthworks to some degree. We know there are definitely trenches still here down by the mill pond, but from what I've read, Greene's are definitely the most substantial at Gettysburg. Case in point, in the middle of the line, we see this traverse, which is a perpendicular fortification to the main line, all right? These are built, in this case, to protect this line of supply. This is Spangler's Lane coming in. And in case of a breach, somewhere in the line, you've got a perpendicular fortification. You can protect the line. This is going to turn out to be a seriously good move at Gettysburg. So within 6 hours, 6 in the morning to noon, all of these works are completed. Now, day 2, most of you know, has this huge Confederate attack at Gettysburg. The idea is that you have a rolling attack all the way around the Union line, kind of one division or one corps at a time. And the idea is to try and force Meade to take troops from one side of the line, move them somewhere else, and open up a hole in the line that Lee can then exploit. All right, it starts about 4 o'clock in the afternoon with Longstreet's Corps attacking Little Round Top. Of course, those of you who've seen the movie know all about that. And then around 6 p.m., A.P. Hill's Corps attacks, and we've got a giant hole in the middle of this line where the 2nd Corps used to be. So at this point, Meade grabs most of the 12th Corps from Culp's Hill and moves them to plug the middle of his line and also reinforce the left of his line. Now, about 8:30, Ewell's Corps launches their attack, and Johnson's division is going to be aimed right where the 12th Corps used to be. Now, Greene somehow manages to stay in place. He's the only 12th Corps brigade left to hold the hill, all right? The division was 10,000 men strong. Now you've got about 1,400 troops left on the right flank of the army. So these guys are going to stretch out and try and occupy as much of the line as they can. Remember, this is a position that was held by 10,000 troops, now trying to be held by 1,400 troops. So the 137th gets down below the traverse just about as the attack takes shape. Greene is outnumbered in this battle 4-1. And if he retreats, the Confederates are going to have an opportunity to wreak havoc in the rear of the Army of the Potomac and capture the Baltimore Pike, which is the main artery of supply from Washington, D.C. This is going to be a bad scene, right, if the Confederates are able to roll up this position. Stuart's Confederate brigade manages to get into the trenches down here and kind of reverse the work. So they use the trenches in the opposite direction to fire on Greene's troops. But Greene manages to hold the hill. We have reinforcements from the 1st, the 11th Corps that come down to help out and hold the traverse. And as the night goes on, the 12th Corps troops come back to their original positions and realize that there are Rebs in the trenches. So this is a big problem. The third day at Gettysburg, on Culp's Hill at least, is all about the rebels trying to push their advantage from the night before and the Union troops trying to retake the trenches. So we have a bunch of back and forth here. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, the Union launches a counterattack to try and regain the trenches, and that kicks off the longest sustained fighting at the Battle of Gettysburg. 7 hours from 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. These guys are going to fight it out on Culp's Hill. Now, at dawn, the Confederates get a big, pretty good look at the fortress that is Culp's Hill that Greene has developed up there. Just to kind of hammer home that point and how intense this fight was, the 149th New York, which is seen here, this is the bronze panel from their monument, counted 80 bullet holes in their flag, and the flagstaff was shot in half twice, okay? So this is Color Sergeant William Lilly pictured here splicing the flagstaff back together. And that flagstaff, I believe, is at the Onondaga Historical Society. You can go see it today. Pretty cool. So notice here, we've got Shaler's Brigade from the 6th Corps coming in on day 3 to reinforce Greene's line. Now, here we have a moment of serendipity on the battlefield. In Shaler's Brigade is the 122nd New York, also called the 3rd Onondaga Regiment, all right, because it's the 3rd regiment raised in Onondaga County, New York. All right, they come into the trenches right next to the 149th New York, which is called the 4th Onondaga Regiment, okay? And when these guys reunite in the trenches, they realize who's come in to their side. They raise this big cheer as they recognize their friends and neighbors that apparently drowned out even the din of battle. And that's a direct quote. So after 7 hours of fighting, the Confederates, and that's the crazy oversimplification of day 3 at Culp's Hill, but so after 7 hours of fighting, the Confederates pretty much realize the futility of what they're trying to achieve, and they're going to fall back and establish a line on the west side of Rock Creek. So the battle for Culp's Hill is pretty much over at that point. Now, those of you who know anything about Gettysburg probably know about Pickett's charge and how the Battle of Gettysburg ends, right? It's a Union victory, defeat for Lee, and huge victory for the Army of the Potomac. So that's Gettysburg, or Culp's Hill in a nutshell. So now let's talk about monuments on the field. And this is covered on the Babcock Smith House website and in the book Built from Stone, but I thought we'd take a minute and look at the actual process of ordering a monument, all right? The golden age of memorializing the Gettysburg battlefield started in the 1880s, 1890s, especially after various state governments started to appropriate funding to build monuments. So case in point, in 1886, the state of New York gave any unit that wanted to build a monument at Gettysburg $1,500 to build a monument. That's about $40,000 in 2020 money, so it's not a small amount of money. And it created a commission to oversee that funding called the New York Monuments Commission. So let's take a look at this. So step one, the veterans organizations meet with an agent and come up with a design for the monument, right? The plan is then submitted to the state's Monument Commission for approval, and I found that sometimes the Monument Commission would even make changes to the monuments, and that's gonna come up later. So then we've got to figure out an appropriate spot for the monument to be placed at Gettysburg. And here's a map from the New York State Archives that shows, laying out the placement for these monuments. The New York Monuments Commission has basically nothing left of their archives. They were in existence for a long time, into the 1930s, and for some reason, really the only thing that's left are these maps of the placement. So nobody knows where those documents are. So the Monument Commission turns around and submits the order to the Smith Granite Company, all right? And it's at this point that the design of the monument is copied into the order book. This is the 140th New York that's on Little Round Top. But you can, you know, we have these wonderful, wonderful books that have been saved by the Babcock Smith House, and they are so cool. You know, I love looking at these things and seeing different names. So then, in actually building a monument, so if you're going to have a statue on your monument, you have to start with the sculptor who makes a clay model, right, kind of a mock-up, that's then turned into a plaster model, presumably so that, you know, the clay doesn't get damaged while they're trying to, you know, actually cut the statue. And that's turned over to a statue cutter who actually creates the monument in stone. Bases, flank markers, other tiers, and such are produced by other Smith Granite craftsmen. So then actually erecting the monument at Gettysburg, we ship the stones to Gettysburg by rail. Foundations are laid in Gettysburg, sometimes by Gettysburg companies. And, you know, really, I don't know if that was a shared responsibility between the guys from Smith Granite that actually went down to set up the monument, or if it was the responsibility in Gettysburg. The jury's still out on that one. Monuments are erected by a setter and a crew. We're going to look at that in a bit. The monument is then dedicated and turned over to the Gettysburg, early on, the Memorial Association for stewardship. But it all begins with the salesman. So I thought we'd talk about one of the most prolific salesmen of Smith Granite monuments, for sure, I should say Civil War monuments, William Bud Van Amridge. All right? Van Amridge, as I said, prolific salesman. He's born in Providence, Rhode Island in 1850 and spent most of his life selling one thing or another. In 1883, he moves from Providence, Rhode Island to Boston and begins working for the Smith Granite Company office at 3 Bromfield Street, which is close to the Boston Common. His uncle is a pretty famous dude. His name is, let's see, it's John Howard Van Amridge. Let's see, Columbia University has given out the John Howard Van Amridge Mathematical Prize every year since he retired in 1910. He's the first dean of Columbia College and is the first president of the American Mathematical Society. And actually, the American Mathematical Society has a song about John Howard Van Amridge that they sing at every meeting, which is pretty cool.
Is that going to be sung now?
Here we go, everybody together. So back to William. At some point, he purchased the Smith Granite office in Boston and started his own business, which is called the Van Amridge Granite Works, which incorporated in 1899 and promoted itself as also representing the Smith Granite Company. So it's unclear when those two, Smith Granite and Van Amridge, became separate entities. This, however, is the 40th New York monument at Gettysburg, and it was created by Smith, but he's using it as an advertisement for the Van Amridge Company. So Van Amridge is not only a particularly adept salesman, he's also an expert on the Battle of Gettysburg. And a 1909 article claims that Van Amridge was more familiar with the battlefield than any man in the country, which is a pretty broad declaration. And he was practically Gettysburg royalty at the turn of the century. He was an honored guest and orator at lots of monument dedications. And although he was a successful salesman, there is an enormous amount of confusion. And these old newspapers in the 1880s and 90s give him these grandiose accolades that you know, are just crazy. Things like made most of the monuments on the Gettysburg battlefield, or designed all of the monuments, things like that. Case in point, built the first monument on the battlefield. So, like I said, he is a prolific salesman, but you know, I'd like to kind of set the record straight here with you today. Is that all right? So Van Amridge sold the monument dedicated to the 1st Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. That's the Massachusetts unit with the numerical designation 1, as in the number, not the word first, okay? He did not design and sell, as some articles claim, the 1st monument at Gettysburg. That distinction belongs to the 1st Minnesota Infantry. Nor did he design the 1st monument dedicated to a Massachusetts unit. that distinction belongs to the 2nd Massachusetts Infantry Regiment, all right? Nor did he design and sell. Oh, by the way, 2nd Mass is also the first regimental marker on the battlefield of Gettysburg. Nor did he design and sell the 2nd monument to the 1st Massachusetts Infantry. He did sell the Smith Granite Company's first monument made for a Massachusetts unit, which is the 1st Mass Battery. But the 1st Mass Infantry monument was the 10th monument that Smith sold to a Massachusetts unit. All right, so to sum up, he sold the 1st Mass Infantry's first, but not their 2nd, and not the 1st at Gettysburg, which is the 1st Minnesota, nor the 1st on the field, which was the 2nd Massachusetts, but he did sell Smith's 1st Mass Monument, which is the 1st Mass Battery, not the 1st Mass Infantry, which was Smith's 10th, which he also sold. So I'm not entirely sure how these newspapers got this all confused. The end of the story is Van Ameridge was a prolific salesman. That's the point. So let's take some look at some monuments. The first one is the 28th Pennsylvania. That's part of Candy's Brigade of Geary's Division of the 12th Corps. This is dedicated in October of 1885. In the 28th Pennsylvania is Lieutenant John Page Nicholson. Nicholson went on to become the chairman of the Gettysburg National Park Commission in 1893, which is a position he held for some 29 years until his death in 1922. So there's John Nicholson. Like I said, this was dedicated October 1885, and as it turns out, the ceremony wasn't actually at the monument because the weather was so bad. But in any event, this is a picture of the order book for the 28th Pennsylvania, and up on top here, this is a forage cap, like an infantry forage cap. We'll see that in a minute. This is a shot of the monument when it was first erected on Culp's Hill, and I love this photograph because it shows us, you know, what Culp's Hill actually looked like before they put Slocum Ave in here. And you can see the 28th Pennsylvania off to the left there. This is probably a Tipton photo, William Tipton photo. This is a modern view. And it looks like they moved the 28th Pennsylvania away from the trenches when they put Slocum Ave in. It's also interesting because the original monument, let's see, was on a boulder, right? On the field. And then after Slocum Ave went in, we can see it's on a granite base. But where that base came from, I don't know. It's not in the order books. This is a really cool picture of the CCC putting in, or actually rerouting Slocum Ave. It used to go to the east of Culp's Hill, and they're rerouting it to go to the west, which is neat. And if we zoom in, we can barely see the 28th Pennsylvania on the left-hand side there. So in 1889, so remember the original is dedicated in 1885. 4 years later, the 28th decides, hey, we want to put a big star on the top of the monument. The star is the Corps badge for the 12th Corps. So we swapped out this big star for the forage cap that used to be on top. The 28th Pennsylvania liked this design so much, they ordered an exact copy for the Chattanooga battlefield. All right, and who's the salesman on all of those monuments? William Budd Van Ameridge. That's exactly right. The 28th order comes in with orders from Knapp's Battery and the 147th Pennsylvania, which we'll talk about in a minute. Knapp's Battery is technically Battery E Independent Pennsylvania Artillery. They're part of the 12th Corps Artillery Brigade. So originally they have 3 guns up on top of Culp's Hill, and when the 12th Corps is pulled out on day 2, they're repositioned on Powers Hill here. Here's a great picture of 3 guns of the battery. This is shortly after Antietam, just to give you an idea what a battery looks like. It's an interesting backstory. The 28th Pennsylvania, in July 1861, this is a huge regiment. They have 18 full companies. It's 1,800 guys. Usually a regiment, you know, when it's first mustered is only about 1,000 guys, 10 full companies. So the first lieutenant of the 28th Pennsylvania, a guy named Joseph Knapp, came up with the idea to raise an artillery company. And he used some of the excess men from the 28th Pennsylvania to fill out the ranks in the artillery company. This unit becomes Battery E, and after it's trained and equipped, it's attached to Geary's command, who's the division commander at Gettysburg on Culp's Hill. At Gettysburg, it's commanded by a guy named Charles Atwell, Captain Charles Atwell. Knapp had retired after Chancellorsville. Atwell is killed at the Battle of Wauhatchie Junction a couple of months later, as is General Geary's son, who's a lieutenant in Knapp's battery, also killed at Wauhatchie Junction. And remember Wauhatchie, that's going to come up later. So Knapp's monument, the battery's monument, this is it in its original configuration on the summit of Culp's Hill. It's ordered in August 1885, like I said, along with the 28th Pennsylvania and the 147th Pennsylvania. And October 1885, for those of you wondering, is a couple of weeks before Marty and Doc go back to Hill Valley. The second monument for Battery E is placed on Powers Hill. It's ordered in 1889, dedicated in 1889. This is a picture of the order book, and we can see up here, right, the monument laid out. But if you zoom down to the bottom, it looks like there's this little stubby thing with a brass panel on the front of it, and that turns out to be the base for the original Knapp's battery monument on Culp's Hill, which was added in 1889, along with the star for the 28th Pennsylvania and the new monument on Powers Hill. The bronze panel, however, is no longer there, and no one's really sure when it went missing and who took it. So, unfortunately, is another Gettysburg mystery. And this monument suffers a lot of misfortune. People keep stealing the cannonball from up on top. This is a shot from a couple of years ago with no cannonball. But fear not, the cannonball is back on top. The Park Service says they've superglued it to the top and it's not going anywhere. But if you notice, the cannonball is a different color, all right? This is Westerly granite on the bottom. The top is Berry granite. Ooh, not Westerly granite on the monument. So let's talk about this guy. James Roach was the professional monument setter for the Smith Granite Company, and he set up all those monuments we were just talking about. He's listed as a professional monument setter in the Westerly directories. He's born in Calyerton, New York in 1851, dies in Westerly in 1917, lived at 9 George Street, which is between Cross and School Street, I think. He set up a whole bunch of monuments in Gettysburg. So you can see my big list of monuments. And he's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a mini celebrity in Gettysburg. He shows up in the Gettysburg newspapers all the time. Like Mr. Roach from Westerly, Rhode Island is here setting up another monument. They misspell his name all the time, but it's definitely him. So case in point, in August 1890, he set up, excuse me, the 1st, 2nd, 5th, 6th, 11th, 12th, 13th Pennsylvania Reserve monuments and Ricketts Battery. And actually, while we're talking about that, he was assisted by a guy named H.G. Barber, who turns out probably is Horace Greenman Barber, born 1842, served in the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, listed as a laborer on the census, died in 1935 and is buried in Riverbend. He was 93 years old when he died. Ben, that sound familiar to you? No? Okay. That was a shot in the dark. So anyway, Roach appears in Gettysburg newspapers in 1886, 87, 89, 90, and 92. But I can't find him, excuse me, in any 1888 newspapers. That's going to come up a little bit later in our story. Roach was definitely here in 1886, setting up the first Massachusetts Infantry Monument. So I'm wondering if one of these guys is actually James Roach. So we have pictures of the monument actually coming in, and this says Smith Granite for Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And here's the picture I was talking about right here of the first mass monument actually being set up. So I'm kind of hoping it's this guy with the awesome watch chain coming out of his pocket that's James Roach, but I don't know that for sure. So if you know any Roaches, R-O-C-H-E, in Westerly, send them my way, will you? And that brings us to the 147th Pennsylvania. These guys are part of Candy's brigade. in Geary's division. This is part of the crew that was pulled off Culp's Hill to go reinforce the center of the line and came back and found, you know, there were rebels in the trenches. These guys ordered not one, not two, but 3 star monuments for the battlefield of Gettysburg. And who was the sales agent for all 3 of those? That's right. So here's the original monument. This is a Tipton photo from 1897. Also a big star. That's the 12th Corps insignia. And here's a copy of the order book. It's pretty cool. These are all kind of mixed together. Like I said, the 28th, 147th, and Knapp's battery all came in as the same order initially. They're all listed on the same page. And there's no like separation like, oh, this is going to the 28th and this is going to Knapp's battery. So I don't have exact dates for you for when they were sent down there. This is a modern view of that same monument. This is the right flank marker. Close to Pardee Field. The regiment was commanded by R.E.O. Pardee at Culp's Hill, and the field right in front of him is Pardee Field. This is a monument that shows their position on Little Round Top on the night of July 1st, also a star monument. So that brings us to the 123rd New York, which is one of my favorite. All right, it's in the top 10 at Gettysburg. These guys are McDougall's Brigade, Ruger's Division, or Williams' Division, depending on how you look at it, of the 12th Corps. This is dedicated September 4th, 1888. This is the monument. I'm not sure. These guys look a little too old to be, for this to be the monument dedication, but in any event, those are the vets with the 123rd. Oh, the monument depicts Clio, who is the muse of history, recording the deeds of the men at Gettysburg. And we only have one other Clio at Gettysburg. It's this one that's on the Soldiers' National Monument. The granite for which the monument itself was actually created by Smith as well, although the statues, I think, were carved in Italy. Is that right? I think so. So here is a copy of the order book photo. All right, pretty neat. So the report of the 123rd's Monument Committee is one of the most complete, most detailed reports I've ever seen. And it sheds incredible light into the ordering process that these guys went through to actually have a monument made. So in March of 1888, they had 5 companies come and present different designs to them, Smith Granite being one of them. They were all rejected. So they had the guys go back to the literally back to the drawing board and come back again in May and present some designs. And the Smith Granite Company won the contract to build this at $2,500, which is $70,000 in 2020 money. And we beat out, I think it's 7 other companies to win the contract. The chairman for the 123rd's Monument Committee visited Westerly twice to come check out the progress. He came to check out the clay model, and he came again to see the plaster model. And I guess he made adjustments to each one of them when he came. Then the 123rd had a big battle with the Memorial Association, the New York Monuments Commission, and one of the other regiments in the brigade, which is the 20th Connecticut, about where exactly they were going to put their monument in the field. There's this big fight about where they actually were. So, you know, it's easy for me to make a slide and say, yes, this was the process of going through this. But in fact, it's, you know, it's this big, complicated, you know, process to do it. And I'd love to look into that further. I think, Brenda, I think you pointed this out to me, but on Built from Stone, page 11, it looks like this is actually a picture of the 1895 Labor Day Parade up at the top of Granite Street. You know, the high school is right there. The track is right there today. But on the Smith Granite Company float, it looks like this is the plaster model for the 123rd monument.
That came from Ike.
Oh, it did. It came from Ike. And we don't know where that actual photograph is, though, right?
I've got a copy.
Yeah.
I have the original.
Gotcha. Because it looks like we've got other models in the float. So, you know, I would love to see a high-res version of that. There's one other shot of this monument from the parade, and it's in downtown Westerly. So this is from the Westerly Public Library, and, you know, there's no doubt that, I mean, at least it's the same pattern, if not the same monument. So This is a photo of the monument from New York at Gettysburg from the New York Monuments Commission. The statue cutter for the 123rd is a guy named Joseph Bedford. And from what I could figure out, he was born in Ireland in 1847, dies in Westerly in 1900, and arrived in the United States in 1855. Looks like he's in Westerly by 1860. Bedford served a one-year enlistment in the United States Navy, and he served on a captured blockade runner, a British blockade runner named the Victory, which the United States renamed the Queen, and I'm sure that's a shot at Queen Victoria and running the blockades. This was converted into a Union Navy supply ship that operated out of New Orleans. From Joe's enlistment record, we know he had blue eyes, dark hair, and he's about 5'7", and he's got a big honking scar on his right forefinger, probably from, I mean, you know, I'm just guessing it's from working on, with stone and working on monuments. He lived at 37 Grove Ave in Westerly for most of his life. Bedford worked for the SGC for 24 years, according to his obituary. This is the first monument he cut, which was in 1781 for Wilcox in New Haven, Connecticut. This is the statue today. And here's a zoom in of the statue itself.
Where is that from?
That is in New Haven. And the last one he cut was Henry G. Hungerford in Jamesville, New York. That was in 1897. So here's a picture of that monument from a couple of weeks ago, actually. So it looks like Joe's forte was to carve, you know, women's statues. However, he's listed as like a co-stone cutter on the American Volunteer Monument at Antietam. So I'm wondering if he's in one of these shots. If you go on the Wikipedia Commons page, there's links to the New York Public Library, and they've got high-res version. This is a whole series of shots that they took. So there's another one for our list. If anybody can help me ID Joe Bedford, all right? There's another one of my favorite monuments at Gettysburg. Famous monument, 78th, 102nd, New York. These are part of Greene's brigade that held the hill on the night of July 2nd. Dedicated July 2nd, 1888, 25th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. Here's a picture of the order book. This is from New York at Gettysburg. This is like an 1897 Tipton photo. And this is a really cool picture because, you know, you can zoom way in and you can see this horse-drawn carriage going up Slocum Ave. And it's actually the original Slocum Ave. It's going east around Culp's Hill instead of west. In 1896, there's a big storm in Gettysburg, and the monument suffered a little bit of damage. But this is an unlucky monument as well. You know, it's been the subject of vandalism and just damage over the years. So here you can see he's missing his right hand and most of the rifle. That has since been replaced, and actually last year they just did some more work on this monument. So if we zoom in, you can see the crack in his wrist where they actually rebuilt the stone. And since this photo was taken, I think the hammer has been replaced. This is, oh yeah, here you go. You can see the cracks in his wrist and the rifle. So this is probably about the turn of the century, just a reunion of the 78th, 102nd with their monument. Now, these two units were consolidated later in the war, so their $1,500 from the state of New York, they combined it to make this gorgeous monument that cost $3,000. And here's one more modern view. Now, a good buddy of mine, Jeff Harding, in Gettysburg, is an author, historian, and licensed battlefield guide. He's actually writing an art, or has written an article about the 78th 102nd monument that's going to come out in Gettysburg Magazine, I think in January, so be on the lookout for that. But one of the things I'm sure Jeff is going to talk about is what everybody thinks is a lion carved into the base of the earthworks. Nobody's entirely sure if that's intentional, and if it was, whose idea was it? But we know Joe Bedford carved this statue, so he's as good a candidate as anybody else. And you can really see that lion right there carved into the base. But again, nobody's really sure you know, where that came from. The sculptor for the monument is a guy named Robert D. Barr. And from what I could figure out, he's born in Scotland in 1857. He dies in Westerly in 1900. Grew up in New York City. It looks like stone carving was probably in his blood. His father, Andrew, is listed as a stonemason on the New York census. His brother Frank is listed as a stonecutter. Lived at 79 Elm Street in Westerly, which I think is Elm and Beach Street. And also, Robert D. Barr, we have some romance at the Smith Granite Company. Barr married Bertha Richmond at the Lorenzo Richmond residence in Pawcatuck in 1887. Lorenzo was a stonecutter at the Smith Granite Company, so we can kind of see how that played out. And that brings me to one of my favorite monuments, the 149th New York, also called the 4th Onondaga Regiment. I gave a talk about this 2 years ago, and I had to kind of work in some updates about this monument today. So I think Linda's going to kill me for talking about this one again. So here's a picture of the original monument. This monument was erected in July of 1888 at the 25th anniversary of the battle, but it was never dedicated because the veterans, for a couple of reasons, hated this thing and tore it down and contracted with an entirely different organization to rebuild a replacement monument in 1892. We know from George Knapp Collins, who was a lieutenant of the 149th at Gettysburg, wound up becoming the chairman of their monuments committee. He said the monument was smaller than was called for and not comparable to other monuments in the vicinity made for the same money. And it turns out he was right. When I gave this talk 2 years ago and I showed these two monuments, right, this is the original monument, this is the order book page for the original monument, the audience figured out in like half a heartbeat what was wrong with this. Anybody see a problem with what they ordered and what they actually erected? Yeah, we're missing a piece, right? So as a result, this monument was about 1.9 feet short of what it was actually supposed to be. By the way, remember I was talking about the Smith Granite Company's professional monument setter, right? James Roach. Well, I can't find James Roach in any Gettysburg newspapers in 1888. So the guy that is like the pro at setting up Gettysburg monuments seems like he might not have been in Gettysburg in 1888, which is, I don't know, he must have been sick or something because we had a whole bunch of monuments that got sent to Gettysburg in 1888. So where is he? I don't know. We're trying to track that down. We do know that these three guys, John Brines, Edward Kelleher, and Joe Thompson, were sent down to help erect the monuments. And this is right next to the 149th monument on Culp's Hill. We can see it carved into the rock. And Gettysburg guide Tim Smith down there was kind enough to trace the rock carving with chalk so we could see it better. And I said it 2 years ago, but I'll say it again. This dude, to show where they were going to set up the monument, he didn't put a flag in the ground. He didn't put up a sign. He carved his name into the rock where it was going. So that's very Westerly, Rhode Island right there. And since the talk 2 years ago, I've discovered this kind of piece of evidence in the Onondaga County Historical Society. This is a newsletter that veterans of Greene's brigade were supposed to bring with them to the monument's dedication in 1888. It had a list of all known members of the brigade and, you know, it was supposed to update contact information and things like that. So you're supposed to bring it with you. And this one belonged to a guy named George Sager, who was in the 149th New York. And he made a couple of sketches on the left-hand side here. So the top one, to me, it looks like he's saying, this is the monument that we got, right? Top left is the monument we got. And on the bottom, it looks like, to me, he's saying, this is the monument we wanted, right? And you can see there's a whole stone in the middle that's not on the monument they got in 1888. So what happened there? We have no idea. Was it a change made by the New York Monuments Commission? You know, was it altered when it was, you know, when the order was actually delivered at the Smith Granite Company? We don't know. But we know the vets were so angry about how short their monument was, they tore it down. So, and we can see, you know, my whole argument for that is that it's, they were angry because they compared their 8'1" monument to other monuments on either side. So to their immediate left is the 78th 102nd. Now that's not a fair comparison because that one costs $3,000 and this one costs $1,500, right? So we'll throw that one out the window. However, to their right, also costing $1,500, is this behemoth statue of the 122nd New York. Now, you might remember the 122nd New York is the 3rd Onondaga Regiment. The 149th is the 4th Onondaga Regiment. So these are the two sister regiments that united in the trenches at Culp's Hill and raised this big cheer. Here they are on Culp's Hill in 1888 to dedicate their monuments. And it looks like the 122nd's monument, if you just take it by the monument, you say the 122nd is much more important than the 149th. And we know the opposite of that is true. The 122nd came in at the 11th hour at the Battle of Culp's Hill. So I think this is the big reason that they rejected the monument. And when I gave this talk 2 years ago, the official measurement for this monument is 11'3". So that would have made the 149th's monument, let's see, 3 feet 2 inches shorter than the 122nd monument. It turns out that this monument is actually 12 foot 9 inches tall. So that makes it about 5 feet taller than the 149th. So that's my wife. You added my wife to that monument. So how do we know that it's 12'9"? Well, Maggie and I went down to Gettysburg with a ladder and we measured it. So there's my selfie. All right, here is the replacement, the 1892 replacement for the 149th New York, and here's the 122nd present day. Like I said, it was made by Francis and Company of Syracuse, New York. Nobody knows what happened to this original monument, and we're still trying to figure it out. We are close. 2 years ago, I said we have no idea, but we are getting closer. And then 2 years ago, somebody asked the question, it was a great question, were there any other monuments that were rejected in 1888? The answer to that question is yes, there was. It's the 140th New York monument on Little Round Top. And coincidentally, the 149th New York, which we just looked at, is on the same order book page as the 140th New York. So what does that mean? I don't know. And I'll tell you what, it was the die in the middle of the monument that they had a problem with. And nobody knows what happened to that either. So that was eventually replaced by the Smith Granite Company and all was well. So that's the story of that. So that brings us back to Greene. Greene, as I said, is a brigade commander, right? Held on to Culp's Hill the night of July 2nd, 1863. So modern scholars of the battle generally agree that Greene and his men exhibited, unparalleled courage and valor on the night of July 2nd, 1863. They held the hill in the face of overwhelming odds in a night battle at 9 o'clock at night against an enemy 4 times their size that looked to be surrounding them in the darkness. And modern scholars also agree that the breastworks that Greene created on the hill saved the right flank of the Union Army the night of July 2nd. But Greene and his men weren't even mentioned in Commanding General Meade's official report. And actually, Slocum, the Corps commander, had to say to Meade, hey, you didn't even mention these guys. We got to fix that. So shortly after Gettysburg on October 19th, 1863, Greene is severely wounded in the face at Wauhatchie Junction, Tennessee, which was a surprise Confederate attack against this rail depot. And he'd suffer from that wound for the rest of his life. The bullet carried away some teeth and part of his jaw, and as a result, he really couldn't chew food anymore. So after mostly recovering from his wound in 1865, Greene served on Major General Slocum's staff, and in March he's given command of the 3rd Brigade, the 14th Division in the 14th Corps, 3rd Division, 14th Corps. He would command that brigade until the end of the war, and he marched with them in the Grand Review in Washington, D.C. Throughout the war, Greene has proven himself to be a frontline general, leading from the front. He has 2 horses shot out from under him, and he's wounded twice in battle, once on Culp's Hill by a spent ball. He had a chest contusion, and like I said, he's wounded in the face at Wauhatchie. After the war, he returns to his life as a civil engineer. and oversaw a myriad of civil engineering projects in New York, in DC, Detroit, and even the sewage system in Providence, Rhode Island. He becomes the chief engineer and commissioner of the Croton Aqueduct Department in New York City, and chief engineer of public works in Washington, D.C. In 1877, he's elected president of the American Society of Civil Engineers, which is an organization he helped found in 1852. He's also president of the New York Genealogical and Biographical Society. He's president in 1876 and 77. Greene was an avid genealogist, and his research is published posthumously by his children after his death. And actually, that's how we know exactly how he was related to Nathaniel Greene. They're third cousins twice removed. And the reason we know that is because of his research. Greene attended the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg in 1893. He still fits into his Civil War uniform, but that's probably because of the wound in his face that didn't allow him to chew food, that he's so that skinny. In 1894, by an act of Congress, Greene is added to the retired list in the U.S. Army and awarded a pension. Greene passes away at 97 years old at his daughter Anna's house in Morristown, New Jersey, where his funeral is held, and he's laid to rest in the family graveyard in Apponaug, Rhode Island, with his first wife, Elizabeth Vinton, and their 3 children. In his will, he definitely told the kids to publish his genealogical research, but he also kind of split up his book collection among the kids. So those were the things he wanted taken care of, was the genealogical research and his books. For me personally, I think that's so cool. There wasn't a lot else in there, but in any event. In the summer of 1899, George's youngest son, now Brigadier General Francis Vinton Greene, who was a hero of Manila Bay in the Spanish-American War, petitioned the Secretary of War for the removal of a boulder from Culp's Hill to serve as his father's headstone here in Apponaug. Permission was granted, and the boulder arrived in Apponaug by rail July 20th, 1899. Shortly thereafter, a bronze memorial plaque was affixed to the front of the boulder, and a bronze cast sword was mounted to the top. Both of these items were stolen in the 1950s and recovered, and both of them are now housed at Warwick City Hall. All right, the plaque and the sword. In 2001, the grave was rededicated with a replacement plaque made out of granite produced by the Guyot Monument Company of New York. Sometime not too long ago, a local legend sprang up that this is Greene's actual sword, his actual battle sword that they mounted to the top of the boulder. Well, the Warwick Beacon last year called it his battle saber, all right, that they had mounted to the boulder. Now, most of you, we don't know each other very well, but what do you think I've been doing for the last couple of years? Trying to figure out where this sword came from. This, we know it's not an actual sword. It was made from an actual sword as a bronze cast that they produced. We know that this particular pattern was produced by Tiffany & Company in New York during the war. Now, whether or not George owned a sword in this pattern or whether or not he actually carried it in battle, the jury is still out on both of those counts. This is a picture of the cemetery right around, we're hoping right after the boulder is placed in the ground at the cemetery. You notice that, this is a cool point, all the headstones face east-west, which is the Christian tradition. George's stone faces to the south, and I'd like to think that's on purpose, facing the enemy with the boulder from Culp's Hill. But speaking of legends, sometime in like the late 1980s, there came this story that this specific rock was chosen in Gettysburg on Culp's Hill because Greene stood on top of it to direct troops in battle. All right? So, you know, not to even talk about the wisdom of a brigadier general standing on top of a rock to direct troops right after you spend 6 hours digging in to protect yourself from bullets. It turns out that you know, nobody actually saw him on a rock, let alone this specific rock at the Battle of Gettysburg. In fact, the only time Greene is mentioned in the OR by one of his subordinates is Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin, and Dawes says Greene was on a horse when he encountered him. This statue was dedicated in 1907, sits on the summit of Culp's Hill, and this actually is supposed to depict Greene directing Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin down the hill to reinforce his lines. So this is the very moment that Dawes says Greene was on a horse. But I think the story of him standing on a boulder comes from this monument, you know. But my argument is, if he was on a boulder, why not just put him on a boulder? Why put him on a pedestal on Culp's Hill? But in any event, this painting I showed before, this is by Edward Forbes, looking at the, you know, the fortress of Culp's Hill. This rock in the foreground has come to be known as Forbes Rock from the painting, and it was used by rebel sharpshooters on the morning of July 3rd. Now, there's a theory in Gettysburg that one of these rocks over here is where Francis Vinton Greene got the rock for his dad's grave in Apponaug, Rhode Island. So here's a Brady photo of Forbes Rock taken a couple of days after the battle. This is a really cool picture too, because you can see in the photo, see all these black marks? Those are bullet holes. And actually, years after the battle, they were losing so many trees. In the 1880s, the Park Service planted more trees on Culp's Hill because so many had died off. But anyway, Forbes Rock, this is Matthew Brady sitting right here. The theory goes that this rock right here is what sits in Apponaug because it's no longer there in Gettysburg. And we could see one of the problems with putting a plaque on the face of the rock is that you have to create a flat surface to mount the plaque. And we could see we've got cracks, pretty straight cracks in that rock. So they might have just lifted that off and taken it back to Apponaug. But that's just a guess. We don't know that for sure. We do know that Greene is starting to get some more recognition than he did originally. The city of Warwick just dumped about $250,000 into restoring the Greene Cemetery. And originally, the first time I went up there, the place was an absolute disaster. Trash everywhere, broken headstones, and I guess it's kind of been a party hangout and a place for vagrants for a long time. But I haven't been up there to see the finished product yet, but I heard it's beautiful. There's a zoom in of the plan. This is like the end of Tanner Ave, I think. We actually get a parking lot. Before we had to park at the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police office that's over here, and kind of wander around and figure out where the cemetery is. But and the last time I was up there, they were actually doing the construction for these beautiful stone stairs that are going to wind their way up the hill to Greene's grave. So that's about it, folks. That's about all I have. But let me leave you with this. We're still looking for information on all of these people, right? Greene, Barr, Bedford, Roach, and Van Amridge. So if you know any, or if you have any information, please reach out to me and fill me in. So I hope you had as much fun listening to this stuff as I did researching it. And thank you very much. Any questions?
So you could talk about the rock in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Used for his headstones. Has there been any geology done between anything that remains in Gettysburg versus what's in his headstone?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't made it that far, but we've had some discussion about doing that. We're pretty sure that is from Gettysburg, for sure. Where's the picture? Yeah, there it is. Not that one, this one. I've been able to match up this stone with what's there now, and there's definitely the same rock, boulder that wasn't there before. We have the receipts from Gettysburg on the Western Maryland Railroad to ship it up here. Somebody paid to ship it up here, so we're pretty sure, and we have newspaper articles of them actually removing it from the field. So we know it came from Culp's Hill, we just don't know where on Culp's Hill it came from. So, but I'd love to find out, obviously. So, yes?
What year did Greene die? I saw the little obit, but I couldn't see the year.
Yeah, it's 1899, January of 1899. Yep, he just missed turning 98 by a couple of months. And it's really interesting. He's born in 1801, dies in 1899, so he only missed living in 3 centuries by a couple of years, right? Very cool. Anybody else? Oh, thank God Joe Task is silent. Yes?
How long is the cemetery in Apponaug being refurbished?
I heard it's done. As far as, you know, this actual plan is all done. Where is it? Yeah, there you go. So, you know, the stairs are in, the cleanup is done. The only thing they're waiting for is the interpretive panels for the actual cemetery. And we've had, you know, we carefully crafted that text. So, very accurate text up there in Apponaug.
Sure it's accurate?
I'm pretty sure it's accurate. So,
Tell them the story.
of the text, I don't know. This is going to be on YouTube. I don't know if I can do that.
Well, then don't.
All right, I won't.
You'll probably have to camera so long. And I want to tell you how exciting it was when you showed the Bedford order books to see my great-grandfather's name there.
That's Joe Bedford?
No, he was a Sonder. He was an Opie.
Gotcha.
And he's on that page, as is a couple of other relatives.
Very cool.
So that's nice. Yeah, very cool.
All right.
Just quickly, can you actually describe your favorite monument in Gettysburg and why it's your favorite monument?
That's a tough one, Joe. I like the 78th 102nd because we get to see what the earthworks were actually constructed of, you know, and get some sense of what they were. The Park Commission built those trenches back up in 1888, so the ones you see on Culp's Hill today aren't the original earthworks, right? They're just rebuilt. And shortly after the battle, you know, the soldiers used cordwood and any materials they could get their hands on to build it, right? So they took apart walls and stuff and put it in the earthworks. Right after the battle, the farmers were like, hey, this is mine, and took all the stuff back. So pretty quickly we had, you know, it was just earth up there. So the 78th 102nd gives us a really clear image of what those were supposed to look like. So it's only one of my favorites, Joe. I had a bunch of favorites. So that's it. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Any chance you can, I know it's going to be on YouTube and so forth, there isn't